Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to another tropical update here by Agent of the Forecast. So, as you guys saw in my first video today, I said I was going to do a triple upload. So, this is going to be my third and final video of today. I was going to do it on something else, but I did realize that with the new model run, a lot of models are starting to agree on the indication for potential another tropical disturbance next week. I know it's next week, and it's very far out. I want to let you guys know ahead of time. It is far out, but models are really agreeing to this a lot, and it seems like it could possibly make a U.S. landfall. This could, I know it's very far out, but it could possibly become Tropical Storm Bertha if Arthur gets named in the Gulf. So it all depends, but I know it's very far, but it's likely that this could potentially become a disturbance and possibly move up the Florida coast and possibly affect the Carolinas. So this is definitely something we need to watch out for because it can be a very early U.S. landfall. Not a tropical depression, but maybe even a tropical storm. So we're going to keep an eye on this. Of course, this isn't going to be 100% accurate because it's still up to more than 7 days out, but it's still something we need to watch out for and could likely it's actually a little bit less than 7 days out, but I know it's far out. But let's just see exactly, just see what we have right now and see exactly what models are showing an indication of this potential disturbance. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. We are only 2 subscribers away from 2,240, so please subscribe, guys. I want to try to get 2,300 subscribers by the end of the month. I think we can do it, so please subscribe and share the channel, especially if you want tropical updates. I'll be doing a ton of tropical updates on anything that could possibly affect you in the summer. Without further ado, let's get this video. So as you can tell, not even the tropical weather outlook or NOAA has issued that disturbance here. I think they will issue it by tomorrow morning here. So if that does become Arthur, this could possibly become Bertha, and that'll be extremely a bad sign to have 2 named storms before mid-May. That's definitely an indication to some early start to the Atlantic hurricane season, and it's likely it could possibly form in between the Bahamas and Florida. That is possibly where we'll possibly see it form. It's going to bring an extremely heavy rain around this whole area, and I think this area for development is going to be that little thing to the north is going to be around the Florida coast. So I think this is going to be our best area of development, maybe right over the Bahamas, in between the Florida, Cuba, and the Bahamas right here. And it's going to be going off the Florida coast and possibly affect North Carolina. So it's very likely it could be taking a very similar route of what Dorian did. Dorian, of course, went through the northern Bahama Islands and then went through here and then went off the coast like that. But this could also go up the Florida coast, but this time could possibly make landfall on U.S. soil. So, of course, way too far out to say it. I'm just saying exactly what models are showing where it's going. So, as we now move into May 14th, so this is about 6 days out here from compared to today. This is where we possibly have that system to develop here. We have all this moisture right here in the Gulf, in the Caribbean here, into the Bahamas and southern Florida. You'll be seeing a ton of precipitation, a lot of moisture and humidity out here into the Florida areas and Bahamas. As we now get later to Saturday, this is when the system tends to possibly maybe become a tropical storm as it does move up the eastern coast here of Florida. It's going to bring in, as you can tell, we have extremely large outer bands with this. This is definitely going to have a lot of large bands with this system as it does move up the coast of the Bahamas. You guys can possibly see extremely large and very high threats for flash flooding. And this will continue to move up the east coast here, and it's going to go a bit further from the Florida area. So it does seem at this point it's going to be heading just to the east of the islands or the Outer Banks area, but it seems like that's not going to be the case. This will be seeing the heaviest rain out there into the middle of the system. As you can tell, it's going to be a lot. It's going to be like a one-sided system based on this, with all the precipitation and outer bands to one side and very little to the other side. So based on right now, this does seem to possibly be just a one-sided system, which you see sometimes, but aren't always the most organized. And as we now move closer to Sunday, this way could potentially make a landfall out here in areas like Wilmington, the Outer Banks, even seeing the precipitation still all the way into the Caribbean. It's stretching like 800 plus miles to the south. So definitely a huge flash flooding, not only for the Bahamas, but also for the North Carolina areas and the Carolinas in general. And that could potentially, of course, bring in landfall for North Carolina. And that could definitely cause a lot of flooding throughout Virginia, Delaware, or Maryland. It's crazy to think that we might actually have a U.S. tropical storm landfall in May for North Carolina, not Florida, not Texas. I mean, that's not incredibly rare, but in North Carolina, that's going to be literally affecting the Mid-Atlantic in May, which is absolutely crazy. And then it'll possibly now move off the coast once again and move and drift off to the sea. So that's what the GFS is model. That's what the GFS model is showing. Let's go ahead and check out the CMC model as well here. And we actually just wait for this whole thing to actually reload really quick. So if we look at this model here, as you can tell by May 13th, Wednesday, here we have all this precipitation throughout of course, the Bahamas, the tropical Atlantic, and it does show, it can't go as far out as we want to, but it does show by May 14th this whole precipitation now moving up the Atlantic coast. So very likely, of course, it could possibly be taking out that same route there. Now CMC is, of course, it is showing a bit different here. Let's just say a bit different. So it is showing a May 14th developing out here throughout, this time the Gulf instead of here. It's possibly forming right here. That's a whole different location, and this actually seems like it's going to bring in a bigger landfall. That's going to be for parts of Florida and Georgia. It seems like it could make a direct impact for maybe Tampa, and then possibly go through Florida, and this low pressure system will be going over Georgia. But we can be seeing extremely strong bands to the Atlantic. So all the models are showing it being one-sided. But that can still, of course, impact the Carolinas. It will still be going through the Carolinas, but CMC shows it not making, does not showing it really making a landfall on North Carolina. It shows it making landfall on Florida, but it's still showing it affecting the Carolinas. As we now get into the models, the 10-meter winds here, wind speed and knots. So as you can tell, by later May 13th, we have a little bit of area of focus here with some stronger winds. Could be seeing around 20 to 24 knots. So we're already seeing a potential, of course, tropical depression. And as we now move later into May 14th, we start to see a bit more of a circular rotation or formation, more vorticity. You're going to be getting closer to 28 knots. And as we now move later on, look at this. We see a huge jump in the wind speeds by May 16th on Saturday. This is actually tropical storm force winds. We're possibly seeing around possibly 45, possibly 47 mile per hour winds in these areas. As you can tell, it does have also some rotation here. You're going to be seeing also these outer bands as well. That's going to be moving up the east coast of Florida. So that's what this is showing. And then it does show, of course, bring some very strong winds throughout the east coast of Georgia and the Carolinas. And that could bring some very strong winds throughout North Carolina and the outer banks there, if it does possibly make landfall there. Let's go ahead and check out now these models. Let's go check out the Icon model here, see exactly what the other models are showing here for the winds. As let's wait for this loads up here. Same thing, it is showing, of course, it's very strong wind gusts throughout the east coast, but it's also showing the very strong winds throughout that other area of potential development with what the CMC is showing. But it does seem it is showing this becoming the potential area of focus out there, like the GFS model, and possibly, of course, bringing in around 28 knots there. And then, of course, CMC, the one that's really showing us really something different, of course. If we next get the CMC to actually pull up, so let's see what the CMC is showing how strong these winds will possibly be if it does like kind of pan out the go out the CMC way. Let's exactly see what the CMC is showing for that potential strong winds for the western side of Florida here instead of the eastern side. And this one actually shows landfall for Florida, while these other models show landfall for North Carolina and the Outer Banks. So let's go ahead and just wait for this thing to actually reload, and then we'll be good to go. So let's go ahead and check out the vorticity here. Let's go ahead and check out the vorticity here for this potential system here in the Bahamas. As you can tell, we are seeing a little bit of vorticity or cyclonic rotation throughout these areas. We have a potential area of development there, and of course, we see that vorticity moving up the east coast and affecting parts of the Bahamas, just like expected. And then we have that really defined circular rotation. They have that defined low pressure system, and as you can tell, it does have very good really rotation, cyclonic really rotation. As we move on with this vorticity, you can see it is going in a rotation. Here we have very well defined. We're going to be seeing that most amount of rotation in the center, which is exactly what you want to have for a cyclonic system. You're going to be seeing the most amount of rotation there in those eye walls, and that's going to potentially, of course, maybe like landfall on the outer banks or just south of the outer banks there, and bring really heavy or a lot of vorticity and strong winds throughout much of North Carolina. And then we have, you can really just see this, like, it looks like a really well-defined tropical system. You have the outer band of vorticity all the way in the Mid-Atlantic, and you have the other band to Florida, and you have the defined low pressure. So it does seem to be very, very well defined on this, but of course it's still not extremely close, and then it does head off. So based on this, based on what most models are showing, not all of them, because CMC of course does show it going this way, but what most models does show is possibly forming right here, okay, right there, and then possibly moving up the coast like this. Then it's going to be moving out a little bit more to this way, possibly, that's actually really, really bad, actually. That would possibly make, this system could possibly form anyway in this area, then possibly move up the coast, and then that wasn't perfect, but move up maybe a bit more this way, then make landfall, and then come back out. That's what this is showing, really. But of course, it's really far out. We don't even know if this is going to actually happen. It's just, models have been showing this for the past couple of days, and they are mostly agreeing here, not like all over the place. Now, May 14th, we're going to be looking at the cloud cover. See exactly this cloud cover. As you see, we have a ton of cloud cover throughout the Bahamas, throughout the Florida areas. And then you see the system. It's huge circular rotation, or huge circular cloud formation there, or a huge circular cloud cover moving up where the system is. Could likely see most likely the eye will be there, and the eye wall, of course, like this. You're going to see the outer bands with this. This is actually just, well, I'm actually surprised it's so well defined and so far out. And then, of course, possibly makes landfall throughout North Carolina, and then it does head out, of course, and then back into the Atlantic. Same thing. We're going to be looking at the, now, really, same thing. This is almost like the satellite imagery here. This is just seeing the brightness of the temperature there, simulated IR. So as you see, of course, is saying this move up the East Coast, and you do see very, very well defined right here, of course, moving up the East Coast and then hitting North Carolina, being Virginia, Delaware. And this actually does not show it moving up the going out back to sea. So that's very interesting. And this is what showing you what the temperatures are looking like right now. Extremely warm temperatures. We have that area development, which is right here, so that's perfect. But we do have cooler waters here, so that is why that's why we saw it weaken a little bit. That's why we kind of saw it fall apart a little bit, but we still have plenty of time. We have basically a week for these temperatures to warm up. So again, we already have extremely warm temperatures for much of the track, really, possibly developing here. And then it does go out like that. So this one little area of cooler temperatures just off the coast of North Carolina that could possibly impact exactly what could happen. Same thing, the rain. Now we're looking at the rainfall totals. Of course, let's look at area of focus or of developments right here. And as you can tell, it does actually see a lot of rain throughout this area, even though it's not really the cone. Seems like it's going to be really like this, kind of like that. That's what it's going to be like that. And then it does seem to go like this, of course. But as you can tell, really, really high flooding issues throughout the Bahamas. And that's going to be throughout the Big Island and those other northern islands that can be seen up to 6 to possibly around 8 inches of rain. Even the areas like Cuba, you guys can get really heavy rain. Seems like the parts of eastern Florida will just get spared with only 1 to 3 inches of rain. But it looks like the Carolina area could be seeing up to 3 to 5 inches of rain. So very likely going to definitely be seeing very widespread flooding threats. Of course, like I said many times, this is very far out. I'm not saying this is going to be a tropical storm landfall. Although I am saying that models are indicating that either for North Carolina or Florida. But we're going to keep on looking at looking at this. I'm going to keep an eye on this, of course, and if we have any major updates, of course, I'll be posting on this. But as of right now, I'll be focusing on the potential subtropical depression, Arthur, if that does become named. And then if this system does really play out how it's supposed to, it could possibly be Bertha, which is absolutely crazy to have 2 named storms already before the end of May. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and bye, guys.